Hello. Hey Jen, I'm live streaming right now. All right. My wife regularly interrupts Zoom meetings and live streams. So that's her back there imitating me. Today's live stream brought to you by Waterloo. All right. We're going to talk about DI stuff today. We're going to be talking about your pedal board queries, pedal queries, all sorts of things. NAMM show, I think, is already underway. I saw that Mark Lettieri got a PRS. Working on a rig right now for bass, which will be cool because we'll have a bass pedal board rig to finally talk about, and lots of cool things. So I have some questions already coming in from over the course of the week. So we'll get to those, and we'll talk about some different DI tones and kind of the future, and if that includes tube amps. Certainly, there's a case to be made now that we're making such high quality DI stuff, or such high quality DI stuff exists out there that it may I don't know if completely replace, but certainly there's a case to be made to go that direction. So Matt says if your pedals are off, but the battery box is on battery mode, does it drain the batteries at all, or only when the pedal is on? Yeah, so if you don't have anything plugged into it that's not drawing against it, you're fine. So you shouldn't have an issue there. Like if a battery's in there and you're just not using it, it's just floating. So you shouldn't have any issue. What's your favorite tone bender? Mark 1, Mark 2, or Mark 3? What's a reasonable price and suggestions for a bender? I like the Mark 2, and I don't know what the JHS ones are going for, but they seem like they were pretty reasonable, like the whatever his kind of like the wedge looking one. Another one that's pretty good, I don't know if they're made anymore, was made by Scotty at Pro Analog. He had a really good one too that I thought was around maybe $200, maybe a little less. So those are all good. And will the Vertex fuzz sound different on a carbon battery? Yes, because it is high impedance transistors, so it'll definitely sound different. Another question, he had typed this one in. For short straight plug connectors, is there any other short model rather than the SP S400 or 500? It's very difficult to get these plugs in Europe. It surprises me because I think that the manufacturer is French. So it's sort of ironic that it's so difficult. I'm curious. I'm looking it up here just to verify that I'm right on this. I'm pretty sure. All right, so this is their website here. And it says it's headquartered in Paris. So I'm wondering if maybe you just need to email these KMMK Solutions people. So then that way you can here it is right there, contact them, Paris, France. So I think you should definitely be able to get those in Europe. I'm not sure why it's so difficult. But I guess that to answer your question, the alternative is Switchcraft. So that was my reminder to tell me that we had our live stream. So yeah, I would say Switchcraft 380 is the smallest size for like the straight plugs that I'm aware of that you could really get anywhere, because Switchcraft is pretty ubiquitous. I'm trying to think of who else makes a short plug like that. I think that they're the only other ones. Maybe G&H makes one. I think G&H makes one for other companies, but it's still a G&H plug. And I think you could look on their website and see, but I think Switchcraft would probably be your best bet. So I use your ultraphonics before the steel string. Where would you put the Rocket Archer in this chain? I'd probably put it before the ultraphonics. That's where I put it. Santa brought me a HX Stomp. Must have been nice and naughty. I'm still trying to figure out how to use it. Lots of features, maybe too many. Yeah, so I think that like the easiest way to use it is certainly with the software. So like if you're trying to do it on the menu, it's really hard, I think, on those to navigate. So I would recommend definitely plugging it into the USB, going into your computer, opening up the software, and then you can start to manipulate it in real time. So you can have it plugged into your amp, and you can start messing around with it, or you can go direct into your DAW or whatever it is that you're using. I think that that's the easiest way to use it for sure. I didn't think it was that easy to use on its own, unless you had the software open to kind of at least get you in the territory. Matt, could you use a TRS SP 550S for a mono patch cable and only wire up the ground in the lead in the third tab? Well, it depends on some of these devices. They use a tip ring sleeve jack, even though they're using a only a TS, and then they'll short the sleeve and the ring. And if that's the way that it is, that could be workable. Sometimes I've just seen issues where, like, how depending on how people short jacks and stuff like that, you can have a problem. So technically, it's possible. I've just seen issues where people have had a problem, depending on like how the internal circuit is wired and where the switch jack is, and if it's utilizing that ring for another ground or not. Those can all play into if you might have a problem. But it may work just fine. I think in most applications it would work. I've done this before on other jacks. I have a pedal that can be controlled by a VC. What controller would you recommend? You're just talking about an expression pedal that's used to control the voltage, and if so, I mean, it doesn't really matter which one you get. They're all going to be pretty much the same. It's just a resistor, or just a variable resistor that's just changing that stuff. So it shouldn't matter to anybody. It shouldn't matter in terms of the sonic aspect. Mahia says howdy to all. Can I control the Mobius timeline in Night Sky from the PVC 10 with a single expression pedal? Which one would you recommend? I think you can through the MIDI programming. Again, the expression pedal really doesn't matter. I usually just go based on the size. So if size is irrelevant, then you can really go with anything. You can go with the Boss FE400 or an FE50 or an FE30 or whatever it is. There's also most of these mini ones now can be used as expression pedals. So the Dunlop ones and things like that can be used as expression. I just go with what size you like. It's irrelevant, again, what the actual controller is. Wet, dry, wet with 1 amp. I have not seen the video, but it makes me really curious. Yeah, so I think a lot of people like who watched it surprised. I thought it would do well. It's been definitely our worst video in the last month in terms of performance. But basically, you only have your dry amp, and then all the wet stuff is going through a cabinet power amp simulator in the Cab Zeus. So the Cab Zeus is in essence becoming the wet speaker cabinets and the power amp, and then that's just feeding 2 other channels in your mixer. So your dry amp is your only amp. That's mic'd, that's going to channel 1. Line out of the dry amp with a line out box feeds the wet effects, 100% wet, kill dry, parallel. Those feed in stereo your Cab Zeus. Stereo Cab Zeus has 2 XLR outs. That feeds channel 2 for the left wet, channel 3 for the right wet. Now you have a wet, dry, wet. And then you can, mix them however you want. I think for the YouTube video, we mixed it down to mono, even though it was recorded with stereo wet and a mono dry, mostly because most people are listening on a phone. And so with that in mind, having hard pan left and rights and then having dry on each of them, it's going to be lost on anybody who's doing this, and most people are not listening to it through monitors where they're hard panned for stereo. So that's how you do it, And so there's some people that said, well, but what if I like to have the wet on stage with me? And the reality is like if you're playing in your bedroom, wet dry wet's probably not going to make any sense. And also you're not going to be able to spread the cabinets that far apart, And so part of it there's an acoustic element to it that's hard to replicate if your cabinets are all really close. Usually when wet dry wet, they would sort of split the wet cabinets kind of, not really far apart, but far enough apart where you could get a kind of like a spatial sort of soundscape. And if you just have them sitting all right next to each other, it doesn't really help you develop, the benefits of all that stuff. So if you did want to do that, you could always go to powered monitors, because most of the powered monitors have paralleled outs. So you could essentially, take your cab Zeus, go into 2 powered monitors, and then have those feed your mixing board, or equally your mixing board could feed it, and then you could have your powered monitors come out. And give you the wet from there if you wanted it that way. But there's a lot of different ways that you could do it. I think that's the easiest way. And Matt says that Rhett's board looks fantastic. Great job on that. And yeah, let me see if we took some pictures of it completed. I'm trying to see if I have any that are handy. All right, so here's one of it open. There's one of it open. I just shipped it off to him yesterday, so he should have it at kind of the end of next week. And then let's get one closed. Let's see what we got. Here's a nice one of it closed. And it's pretty dang cool, and that interface in the back really does everything, which is pretty cool, and gives him lots of different options. I thought it actually sounded really good. The only thing that was a little weird about it was the delay llama. For whatever reason, it has like a little oscillation to it when it's on, so you can't leave the trails on. Otherwise, you get this kind of like woo woo woo, and then you can hear it with the time and the repeats. You can actually change the oscillation. And I thought, oh well, maybe it's too close to the AC, even though I kind of took that into account. So I took it off the board and kind of moved it away. It didn't change it at all. So I think it's just kind of like. Some analog delays are just like that, they just can be a little bit noisy. It sounds really good, but I told Red about it, and I was like, "Hey, is that like a big deal to you?" And I kind of recorded it for him. He's like, "Yeah, like you'd never hear that in a mix, And so it was subtle, but it was there. That was the only thing that I said about it. What's the Jext Fox pedal based on? Whatever was in there, it looked like it was. It didn't look like there was any transistors. It looked like it was all. Oh, that one might have been like more, I don't know, it looked like it was more of a muff, but I didn't really get into it. The only thing I had to do was just tighten everything down because all the jacks and pots were loose on it. So I only took it apart really briefly just to do that. So that was that. But let's talk about some DI stuff. If pedal board stuff comes to you as we're going, we can of course address that on a 1-by-1 basis. But there's been a lot of cool. We've done a lot of cool videos lately where we've talked about going direct, and even my main board that has the Cab M. That thing is great, and we've got our own IRs for that we've given away for free. In fact, on the Sweetwater video that we did, the What's on Your Pedal Board, I think it's listed for free, as well as the one that I recently did. I also noticed, just coincidentally on YouTube the other day, that Tomon did a kind of a What's on Your Pedal Board type thing with one of their kind of primary one of their primary guys. And let me show you this. And I noticed that he's using a very similar setup to me. So I wonder if this, may be catching on. Check this out. So you look right here. here's the the Tomon demo guy, and he's got a Steel String Supreme, and he's got the Cab M and the Collider, and so he's kind of going with that style, of being able to go direct, super versatile. So I think that this is interesting to me that we're starting to see this pop up, and I've seen a couple of other people kind of not necessarily use the Steel String Supreme, although actually there's a few employees at Sweetwater that are doing this technique where they got the Steel String Supreme, they're going into the Cab M because the demos that we did there in person sounded so realistic and so good. So I think that that's a big thing, and then I also think that like things like the Cab Zeus is a really cool one to use, especially for wet dry. I don't like the Cab Zeus as much for what I use the Cab M for. I don't think it's as realistic of a I don't think it's as realistic of a cab sound, but this is it here. I'll show you here. So this is the Cab Zeus. This is what was on the wet dry wet board, and I think that this sounds better for just like emulating speaker sounds. I don't know that it sounds that great for amps, but I really like using it for wet dry systems. I think it sounds really good, and I think that guys were maybe envisioning, like when I look at all these different things, like guys are talking about using pedals or effects processors or amp heads. This thing still would need a load if you were going to run an amp head into it. Your amp would still need to be loaded down, and it has those parallel throughs so that you could do that. But I think that this is a really versatile box for speaker simulation, and I don't think it sounds as good for DI. The one that a lot of people like, though, is called the Simplifier. And this pedal, let's see. This pedal is kind of an interesting unit. Let's see if we can find it. Here it is. So it's a 0-watt amplifier is what they're calling it. In essence, I'm trying to see if we can find just a straight up photo of it. They have a lot of these images. All right, so this one's got 3 classic preamps. You have your AC Brit, which is like an AC30. You have an American, which is like a Blackface Deluxe. And then you have a MS Brit, which is a crunchy plexi. So you have 3 different styles that you can go through. And then you have your power amp simulation, so you can have your different style of tube complements. And then you got your stereo cab sim where you can do a 212, a 412, or a 112. This is just interesting because each one of those amps that they're modeling, like some of them are certainly open back cabinets, whereas others of them are certainly closed back. And then it looks like they have a bass version too. I'm trying to see if it shows all the connection points. I presume that everything is balanced out of it, but yeah, they don't show a bunch of. Okay, so it's got a stereo effects loop, so you can run your stereo effects, although really would only need a mono send. And then it's got 2 balanced outputs. And they're in Santiago, Chile. Very cool, yeah. So this one is kind of trying to do a similar thing. They're obviously going with a couple of classic amplifiers. They're I don't think that it's MIDI controllable. Doesn't appear to be MIDI. Yeah. So you whatever you select, you're locked into. But I can see where people are into this. Like. I can get why this would be a benefit. And then, of course, there's the Iridium that seems to be everybody's favorite, although when I compared this thing to a real amp, I just thought it was like, I thought that some of the analog pedals that do have a cab sim sounded way more realistic to me. But it is cool that you can load in your own IRs, but I don't know. I don't really feel like when I think of what Strymon does best, like amp emulation is not really like what I think of. Like the guys that are there are not like big amp snobs that have Dumbles and Marshalls and all sorts of stuff. Like when I would go over there in LA, they had like a bunch of Line 6 spider valves. So like I don't think of it. I mean, and I understand it's to test, but it's like it's like pretty bare bones. Like they weren't guys that were heavily invested in the amp game. Um, but I think that the coolest thing that if I were to say if there's one product that I would say if you're going to go direct, what I would use, I think it's certainly the Cab M. I think it's the smallest. It's pedalboard friendly. You can load in your IRs. It now has a power amp simulation and a preamp simulation if you want it. Load in your own IRs. Use your favorite distortion pedals, and I think that one is the most convincing. It's small. It's very inexpensive, and I think that a lot of the things that the Strymon, purports to do, like you want to be getting your distortion from your analog devices. Like if you're running the Iridium like a Plexi for gain, like what's the point of having these gain pedals anyway? And I think that the high quality amp and box pedals sound closer to me than those do anyway. So I think go with a clean platform and then use your favorite pedals, and that will be closest to the amp. And you can do what I did, where you have a splitter, so you can go either way. If you have a gig where you can take an amp, you can use it. There's no consequence. If you can't take an amp, you go out of the Cab M and you got your direct sound. So I think that's the move in my opinion, and I think that they're going to get better. We've talked about doing something along these lines, kind of with the more classic amps. To me, like I get why guys would choose AC30, but really, like I would probably do like a Dumble one. So you got like a Dumble clean, you got an overdrive special that's a 6L6 based one, and then you got an overdrive special that's like an EL34 based one, and then you can add a boost to either of those. And to me, I think that would be a cool move where you could have like kind of like a and then have the classic Dumble cabinet simulations built in. The only downside of that is like doing it with IRs I think would be preferable. I'd have to like hire somebody though that would really get into that, unless I wanted to license the two note stuff, which is what Mesa Boogie did on their cab clone IR. They've licensed that from Two Notes, as did Rev. Rev has licensed Two Notes IR stuff so that they can do that. But I definitely think that we're going to see a lot more of this stuff and some cool ideas that are coming out in terms of solid state preamps that can take pedals well, that go direct, that can do some sort of cabinet simulation or IR loading. I think that that's definitely the future, and I do think we're going to see a lot more of that. So I'm curious though what you guys think. Like, has anybody tried? There's only three of us, so we can really get personal today. Have any of you tried the Iridium versus the Cab M versus even Line 6? The Stomp has some of those models. Have any of you tried or compared? I'm curious what your take is on it. You haven't tried it. Yeah, I mean, I think that it can be cool if you're used to using amps or you have the ability to use amps. I think that's of course going to be better. I'm trying to look at and see if there's any other ones that I haven't thought of. Another one that I tried a while ago that was kind of interesting was this one. Let me show you. It was the Blue Box. This one only did cabinets, but it was actually pretty good. And I thought that what I liked about it is they went after, I think, most of the common IR sounds. And I think I did a good job. Excuse me. And we actually used one of these on one of our we used one of these on one of our NAMM show booths once, where we were using quilter heads, and then we were using this as the cab. And I thought it was pretty good. I thought it actually sounded pretty decent. I mean, like, they made their choices obviously on what they wanted it to sound like, but it was very close. So I was impressed. So this is also another one that I thought was pretty good. I'm just looking at what people are talking about in terms of IR loaders. See if there's any other. I've heard about this hot tone or Hotone one. I haven't tried that one myself. Um, Matt said he had an Iridium. Fender and Marshall sounded bad. The AC30 sounded good, but I got frustrated. I landed the tone, ended up selling it and buying another tube amp. Yeah, I mean, I think that, I know that people that like them a lot, like Brian O'Million from O'Million Audio, which is basically a division of Guitar Sanctuary, which is a dealership out in Dallas that actually carries our stuff. And then he works for them inside this office there, and he, I know, likes it on his rig. But he's playing in a very specific environment, in a church where they don't have any amps on stage. I can understand going that direction for that, but when I played it, I just thought, like, man, like, if people who had real Marshalls, like I have a real Marshall back there. Actually, I have two. I have one from the '70s and then one from the late '60s, and there's no comparison. This is not even the same thing. Even Mike, it's not even the same thing. I had a cab amp and personally did not like the power and preamp simulation. I did like the post EQ that you can add, and the best cabs I found were the Two Rock ones from their website. Yeah, they're great. I think of the ones that are available from them, I agree those are best. Did you try it though, Matt, with the Steel String Supreme? Because I really think that, like, you kind of have to have, like, the right analog gear going into it to kind of prime the pump, and then it's, like, pretty unbeatable in my mind. Like, I remember we fooled a bunch of people at Sweetwater. We had these QSC monitors on the floor that were kind of next to a pair of Hot Rod DeVilles, and people had difficulty, believing when we would switch it back to the amp that it had been in those QSC monitors the whole time. Like, we would just be talking to them and demoing, and I thought that was pretty good. But certainly, like, yeah, the Cab M, I think, is the number one. But again, you have to have good sort of amp in a box pedals, good distortion pedals. A nice Marshall sounding pedal, a nice kind of Dumble-y sounding pedal. That goes a long way, I think, in really selling that sound. Let's see, what else are we working on we can talk about? Oh, we're working on, Mejia is going to be finishing up the David Ryan Harris video for that pedal board. And I don't know if any of you follow David Ryan Harris, but he got COVID when he was traveling to Atlanta. So that delayed our timeline a little bit in the release of this, but we're glad that he's okay and he's back to normal now. And I don't think that was anything secret. He posted that on his social media and all that stuff. But yeah, so we're looking forward to that. Rhett's is on his way back to him, so hopefully we've already filmed like everything here in terms of the build and that sort of stuff. And then he's going to kind of do the sound demo and the wrap up and all that stuff. So that's from Rhett. And then we just shot on Wednesday a patch cable shootout, and we've been talking about doing this for a long time. And the way that we're going to format this, which I think is really cool, is we did 7 of the most common patch cables. So we did Mogami 2319, Mogami 2314, Canary GS4, Lava Tightrope. We did Evidence Monorail. We did the Bestronix patch cable. And there was one more. What am I missing here? There's one more that we missed. Um, Evidence, Mogami. There's one other one. It was one that everybody would know. Oh, George L. It was George L. And so we put them all in my true bypass loop reader because I have that long one of 12 loops. So I put the 7 of them in the last 7 loops. Then I put one of our buffers from the Vertex Boost because the Vertex Boost is the same buffer as we'd ordinarily use in a pedal board. And then we put a Boss tuner to see the buffer there. So what we did first is we just played examples where clean amp, guitar in, and then I would just switch into each one of the groups of patch cables. And I would have 30 feet of that patch cable in one loop. So it would simulate roughly about the amount of cable that you'd have in a 10 pedal rig or so. So we did that, shortest cables as possible on the input and output, but then 30 feet, which is like the primary thing that's getting switched in and out, played through a clean amp, played through a dirty amp, Les Paul, and Strat. So we recorded all that, which is very helpful. And then I'm sending it out to 10 YouTubers. So we'll have Brian Wampler, we'll have David Ryan Harris, who's not really a YouTuber, but certainly a good guitar player, Rhett Scholl, RJ Ronquillo. I'm trying to think who else we gave it to. Josh Scott is going to do it. Anyway, just a bunch of people. They're gonna listen to all the clips because we've just ordered them. Like, here's all the clean Strat clips, seven cables. Here's all the dirty Strat clips, same 7 cables. Here's all the dirty Les Paul clips, 7 cables, and here's all the clean Les Paul, 7 cables. They don't know what they are. We've just anonymized them with just numbers. So cable 1 is, I don't remember what we assigned to it, but cable 1 is Lava or Mogami, whatever it is. And then they're going to listen to them all, and then they're going to tell us which one they think sounded best in a recorded context. And so we'll get to see kind of like how they actually stack up. Like, is it an even distribution? Is it really just truly a matter of taste when it comes to patch cables? Or are there certain ones that actually separate themselves? And then we're going to go into that and then introduce the buffer. And I'm not going to send that part to them. I'm going to kind of self-analyze that. But really the spoiler alert is if you have a good buffer, it doesn't really matter which patch cable you use, as long as it's not just like complete dog crap. Like, as long as it's like a decent patch cable, pretty much all those sounded pretty close to each other. The worse the buffer quality got, the more it mattered. So when we switched from the Vertex Boost, we just turned off just using the buffer, and then we went to the Boss one. The Boss one certainly had a little bit more roll off, certainly had like a little bit more just kind of like woofiness, but when you got rid of both the buffers, you could really tell on some of them. Like, there was one cable in particular that, man, it was like, it sounded like a completely different cable. And Mejia was like listening to it too. It's like, oh my God, like, this is really, really different. So I think it's a good tell, and I think that we're going to do it in such a way. Traditionally, our cable shootouts have not been very popular. I think with some of the star power of some of these other YouTubers, it will be good. And I think I'm only going to play the clip, like just one clip of each cable, so there'll only really be 4 clips of playing. And then, the audience will have to presume, that they listened to all 7 and then they chose whichever one. And then we'll actually put all the content or the recordings out, so anybody that wants to download them and then compare them side by side, they can make that comparison themselves. So I'll put all the clean Les Paul, dirty Les Paul, clean Strat, dirty Strat, and then they can download them and they can do their own analysis of which ones they think sounded best. And so they'll get the same clips that any of the other participants got. So I think it'll be a cool video, and I think it'll be telling. And I don't even frankly know which ones they're going to choose. I think by themselves, without any buffer, I think that the best sounding ones to me, and again, I knew what they were, but I thought the Mogamis both sounded really good. And where I really noticed the difference was not so much clean. There was one that sounded awful on everything. And it was just really dark, and it had a lot of attenuation. I, in fact, thought I did something wrong with the cable and opened it up and double checked that everything was fine, and it's just that cable. But when you're using high gain, I noticed that the bass response on some of those cables became really flubby. And I was playing as the example Immigrant song from Led Zeppelin, because it's got some good sort of syncopated rhythm. It's easy for me to not have to have a click track and be able to kind of stay in time and be pretty representative across the cables. And I noticed that, when you're droning on that E string, which is kind of part of, how you would play that song, you're kind of alternating between the E and D string, that it would just fall apart on some cables. There was no tightness in the bass. It was just like absolutely just like a mess. And you had to really compensate with palm muting so that you wouldn't get this weird sort of like spillover into the rest of the notes that just overtake everything. Whereas some of them were really tight and really crisp. And so the Mogami, to me, especially with the high gain, seemed to be the best sounding. I also thought the Canary was pretty good sounding too. But some of the other ones that were the more expensive, more boutique ones, they kind of had like this bass that almost just like overtook everything. It was really hard to get rid of it. And you really had to compensate with your playing in order to kind of get rid of it. And then some of them too had a really, really shrill top end that even though the amp was the same, like if you picked it dynamically, you would get a lot more top end than you would of the other notes. So that was just some things I noticed in doing it. Was the bad one lava? That is currently what I have. I'll eventually switch them all out once this video comes out. That was the bad one. It was so dark. It was so dark, and when she put a buffer in front of it, then it was okay. It was pretty much the same as the other one, but without any buffer, boy, it was unbelievably dark. I thought there was something wrong with the cable. Because when I tested them, when I made them, I made them all the same connectors and everything like that, just so like everything would be the same. They're all 30 feet. They all use Switchcraft 380 plugs. I did the same thing on every one. And I just tested them by themselves just to make sure that they were working, that I wasn't getting any weird resistance from the thermal conductive plastic, so I made sure I did a resistance test on it. There was nothing weird or out of the ordinary. And man, they were brutal. The other ones were all, they were all kind of like in a decent variation away from each other. But again, buffer kind of eliminated a lot of those variabilities. And if the better one you used, the more you could get away with. So, yeah. I'm living in a lava tone matrix. I need the Mogami red pill. Yeah. Yeah, they're definitely, the signal was not flowing on that one. It was a victim of its own pyroclastic flow. Anyway, so that was a good little teaser on what to expect when you go to the when you go to watch that video. And I think that should be a couple weeks, at least a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks away, because we have to get all the participants to submit their answers. So, but I'll give you the full list because I just had to send this to our video editor, our other video editor, in addition to Mejia. So we got Daniel Steinhardt from That Pedal Show. We got Rhett Shull, Kerry Marshall, R.J. Ronquillo, Ariel Posen, Josh Scott, Corey Wong, David Ryan Harris, and Brian Wampler. So I think that whatever we do, there's certainly going to be enough quality voices to validate whatever it is that's going on. My opinion will be removed from the findings, so it will I think stay about as neutral as it could possibly be, given the circumstances. One other thing that I want to talk about, and again, as things come to you, please feel free to put those in the comments, and we will discuss. But man, if you didn't see the Corey Wong thing yesterday. That he's got a new series, which is Corey Wong and the Wong Tones, and it is hysterical. It's really, really well done. Corey spent a ton of money developing all of this stuff. They did they did like a quarantine bubble and did the whole band part in Nashville at what's the place called? Their sound check, and did one of the big rehearsal big rehearsal rooms, and set up like a whole set. And then they went to Burbank in LA, and they did all these like sketch comedy things in there that were hysterical. It's pretty great. Um, and we both of them were used in the comparison. We did 2314 and 2319. They're pretty similar cables. They're using the same exact type of shielding, spiral shield, same type of wire. Just the 2314 is slightly narrower, or smaller diameter. But if you guys haven't watched the Corey Wong thing, my recommendation is that you do it. I'll play you just the trailer because I think it's so hysterical. But certainly well worth it. If you haven't checked it out, I'll show it to you now. I'll blow it up.
Yeah, I saw Corey Wong last night. He killed it.
Killed? Killed?
Looks like it's worthless. It looks like the for whatever reason the stream is going too slow right now. I think my wife is like operating, she's doing a professional development with like 20 teachers on Zoom. So I wonder if it's eating up all of our bandwidth. But definitely go and check out Corey Wong's new show. It's really funny. It's really well done, and I can't believe how much money he spent on that. I don't know what the amount is, but I can just guess, knowing like what it costs to make videos and like how much time that must have taken. So he's going all in, and I think it's a pretty great example of a musician, making lemonade out of lemons. So I'm hoping that people can show him a little love over there, because man, it's really really creative what they're doing. I'm really inspired by what they did. But yeah. Anything else that's on people's minds this week, on their pedalboard minds? I do have a question for the people that are here too, until somebody else chimes in. We've been approached by an organization that does like classes, kind of like master classes, and they wanted to try to produce some sort of Vertex or Rig Doctor courses that they would sell, or that we would sell, and that they would help us kind of position and launch. But I said to them that the challenge is that we give all this information away for free. Like in terms of the videos, like we don't charge anybody anything to watch them. There's no paywall or anything. And to then, I don't see how we would monetize, how we would charge somebody for content that we already had put out for free. It's like, so how do you explain to somebody how to solder a patch cable if they can just go and watch our patch cable soldering tutorial for free? Why would they pay $10 for it, or $20, or whatever they would charge for something like that? So my question is what do you think is a skill that we teach or that we go through where it would even warrant having explicit information? Because I wouldn't want to stop or turn off the faucet on the free content, the DIY content. But at the same time, I don't know. I mean, maybe there is stuff that like we could do more explicitly that's beyond the scope of whatever it is that these videos would cover, where somebody would want to pay for that stuff. But I just don't see that somebody would pay. I don't know that I would pay for it if I was getting it for free, and the person was still willing to continue making the same content. I don't know that. I think it would be a hard sell to convince somebody to spend $10 or $20, to learn a specific skill that we've already done numerous videos on. So if anybody has a hot take on that, I'm curious. So Matt says pedal modding or fixing your current channel doesn't have it, but would totally pay for videos on it. Okay. And Matt, would that be like how to replace a broken foot switch, or how to replace a broken jack, or how to replace an LED, or, you know, I mean, because I think it would have to probably be specific to certain pedals, because some of them there is just not that much crossover. Like foot switch is pretty universal. DC jack probably pretty universal. There's really only going to be two styles. It's going to be a PCB mounted one, and then there's going to be a chassis mounted one. So those are two things that are pretty easy. Foot switch is going to be pretty easy. But if it got into modding, it would have to be sort of based on a specific pedal. So it's like, here's like Tube Screamer mods, or whatever. Got it. Okay. No, this is interesting. But I would just assume, with that stuff, if we were going to do that to democratize it, like not put it behind a paywall. Because there's probably not that much. I haven't looked for that stuff, but I would imagine there's probably not a ton of great stuff about how to do that. But I don't know. Advice to put together a pedal that I don't know why it doesn't exist. I would definitely pay for that. Solving a problem when playing live. Okay. Thank you for this feedback. I know there's only a couple of us on here, but if you're watching this later, you have any ideas of what you think would actually bring value to people that's not part of something that we're doing, or maybe we just do the thing like we do on when we do the podcast, and the podcasts are going to start coming back again. By the way, for any of you who are listening to them, Hunter is working on editing one right now. Is that anybody that wanted access to these live chats, and they couldn't afford it, that we would always offer a free version of the account. It's a little complicated because Patreon doesn't allow you to let people in for free, like you have to pay for it. But we are going to be launching a new Rig Doctor website called therigdr.com. I think I might have showed it to you one of the last times, but if we didn't, I'll bring it up. It's not, I don't think we're selling anything on it yet, but it's technically up. But basically, like, we'll have this Tone Academy, which is like, we'll attempt to transition over those of you that no longer want to do Patreon, but it'll essentially be the exact same thing. So we'll still keep the Patreon open for people that want to, but we'll have some sort of like incentive, for you to do it. Like you get, a discounted month, or you get a prorated rate, or something like that, to come over to the Tone Academy, where essentially we're still going to be doing the same exact things. We'll still have the interactive aspect and all that stuff as we do on Patreon, but it'll be done through here. We'll also have, the Tone Shop, which will have, our Tone Essentials kits. So these will be like all of the Velcro and dual lock stuff, and the zip ties and all that stuff. You'll be able to get all that here, so you will have a curated list based on the number of pedals that you want. So we'll have all the zip ties and tie down mounts and everything like that you'd need. We'll sell our patch cables. We'll sell our guitar cables. The pedal boards will also be for sale on here. So like kind of anything that we're talking about, we'll also have the buffers available on here so that you can order a custom buffer, things like that. So this is something that will be kind of officially launching here soon, but it is not yet complete. Although you could always go to therigdr.com and snoop around if you wanted to. And this is just kind of things that we're working on. I wanted to buy a West Coast clear wah back plate for my Axis wah. Is the back plate the same as the Crybaby? Um, I don't know about what they're doing. I mean, usually the back plates are pretty standard on all that stuff, so the spacing should be the same. So there shouldn't be any issue with that. But I don't know what he's charging, but there's a lot of plastic stores here that will just like if you take them an existing wall plate, they'll just laser cut you a nylon or acrylic plate that you could use. And I used to do that in the old days. Just so you'd have like a little bit more stable mounting surface because those bottom plates on older walls especially are such garbage. They're like just there to keep something to protect it from dust and stuff like that. They're really not. I've actually seen walls like get like bent. Like you can almost like separate it from the bottom plate. They're such thin metal. I think also Matt Bestronics sells a plastic bottom plate as well. If that's closer or cheaper for you. Any other questions? Anything else is on people's minds? Things about their pedal boards? Last minute pedal board inquiries. All right. Well, if there isn't any, if they come in while I'm talking, we'll get to them. But one more. There are very good options for palettes to sound one way or the other. However, I think a lot of this works really well in the studio. I think there are a lot of very good options for pedals to sound one way or another. However, I think a lot of this works really well in the studio. Got it. Yeah, I mean, pedals have gotten so good. There really didn't used to be that many. A lot of the boutique brands that were, the sweethearts of the gear page, most of them weren't particularly well built. They were just boutique, and so people liked them for that reason. And now, like the quality of pedals is very high. Like most of the pedal guys understand manufacturing, even if they're not electronic wizards, and they know how to outsource properly so that they can get really high quality stuff. So yeah, I think if you're a consumer right now, there's a lot of good options out there that even if it's not my personal favorite, I can still appreciate how well they're built. And I think that there's a lot of companies that are performing at a very high level in that regard now that even didn't exist maybe 5 years ago. I need something I think all guitar players worldwide would really appreciate. Not a question, but I wanted to say that I absolutely love the in-depth interviews that you've done with Michael Thompson and the LA guys. Thank you for doing this live chat with us. Absolutely. I'm trying to get Tim Pierce on. I actually texted with him a little bit today, and we have a call scheduled, not for the podcast, but to kind of talk about some of the options next week on Monday. So hopefully we can get Tim Pierce to agree to come on and talk a little bit about his career. That would be really cool. And if you guys have other suggestions of people we should try to get on, I think Bukovac will come on, who's in Nashville. I want to get Dan Huff. I've texted with him too, but it's just kind of hard to nail these guys down because they're working so much. To spend an hour or two is like 15% of their day or their working day. So it's hard to get stuff to line up. What do you think of the new Silver Sky finish? I think all that I can't do. If you look at the colors of my guitars, sunburst, sunburst, gold top, sunburst, sunburst, butterscotch blonde, and my 335 is red. Like a classic kind of like translucent 335 red. I have no like weird colors or unique colors. Even the Anderson Super Strat that I have is a sunburst. So I'm like super traditional in that regard. Like my guitars are like t-shirt and jeans, man. So to me, those Silver Sky finishes, I mean, like I appreciate it from an artistic standpoint. I would never buy one in that color. If I were, I would rather take that guitar, sell it, and get a black one or a white one or the gold one. I think looks pretty cool of the Silver Sky, I mean, I think it's unique. I don't think that it's not for me. I'm very boring in that regard. Right. Okay. So you're saying to make a pedal that I mean I think that I think if you really do want to make a pedal, there's a lot of ways to do it. I mean, a lot of the guys that run pedal companies don't know how to make a pedal either. They just know that they want a specific thing, and then they'll hire people to make that sound. They'll hire somebody who can design that for them, and that's pretty common. I can think of a couple of companies right now where that's like the guys that own the company don't know anything about electronics. They just have a point of view, and then they hire people to help them express that point of view in a product. So you could certainly do it. I think it'd be hard to make a masterclass type thing though on that, because we would have to have some sort of alignment on what the sound was, and I think there's so many ways you could take it. It's really hard to create a bass line. Yeah, Tim Pierce would be good. I think he would be good too. And again, Dan Huff, Tom Bukovac, those guys would be cool. I love the Michael Thompson one. He's always such a great conversationalist. I don't have a good relationship with Michael Landau anymore, but I don't think he would have been a good interview. Like even if he and I were best buddies, I wouldn't put him on probably, because that's just not like he's so articulate in his musicality, and he's much more shy in a recorded conversation. Maybe Robin Ford. I'm still buds with him, and so maybe we can get Robin Ford to come on. He's cool. He has a lot of stories. Yeah. I've actually I've been texting a little bit with Brian Wampler because I messaged him because I was putting this pedal in this like kind of switcher rack thing, and I wanted to make it so it defaulted to on, and they have a little bit different system, and he kind of helped me figure out the programming so that we had to like basically reprogram their relay chip so that it would default to on, because when you have that rack, or a switcher, you don't want to have to turn every single device on every time you fire it up. You want it to default to the on position. So he'd help me with that, but I was actually thinking about making a video about, like, are hand-wired pedals bad, and if something's made in China, is that bad, and so like kind of exploring, maybe it's 2 videos, so we can kind of explore the idea of like, where is it, acceptable to make something overseas, where is it not advantageous, like, can you make an American quality product overseas in China? Certainly, if you got an Apple phone or any of this stuff, that's all made overseas, and nobody balks at the quality of most Apple products. And then kind of talking about this handwire stuff, because even though we've talked about it some here, I think in a general sense, most people still believe that if you have a hand-wired guitar pedal, that it's advantageous because they've heard these myths from other people or they don't really understand the difference. I mean, I've even seen some people, call out pedals on Facebook or on YouTube, and they'll say, "Oh, that pedal just has surface mount junk," and it's like, well, Strymon's all surface mount. Are they junk? JHS is mostly surface mount. Is that junk? So I think that there's all these misconceptions because somebody told them, 15 years ago when somebody did a poor job at, converting a product or a cheaper product was made with surface mount, that somehow colors how they see everything that's surface mount. So I think sort of creating some clarity and using guys like Josh or like Wampler to sort of qualify this stuff, because if it's coming from me, I mean, it's fine for people that, have bought into our channel and we've developed a rapport with, but for most normal people, I'm no better a voice than anybody else, it's sort of being able to talk about this stuff. So that could be cool. And I agree, Matt. Mejia's voting for the Toad. The Toad is the is the way that the former owner of Lava Cable, Mark Stoddard, had identified himself as the Toad. That was not a derogatory term that we've put toward him. He is self-identified as the Toad, but I don't think he owns Lava anymore. I think he sold that to somebody else. So. Well, anyway, guys, it was wonderful speaking to you. I appreciate all you that are here. And for those of you who are watching this later on, if you think of anything or stuff comes to mind, please feel free to put that in the comments, and we will always get to those. Or if any of you think of anything after the fact and want to put it in the comments, please do. And we'll see you next week. I will be in LA next week, so we'll do that from the showroom. I'm getting that set up for Mejia because Mejia is going to be moving down to LA. I got an output desk, so those are really cool studio desks, and so we're going to get that set up for him. We're going to get a cool Pro Tools rig for him, so he'll be styling. So have a great weekend, everybody. See you later.